Odysseus and the Dreamless Island. Chapter 1. The night the crew spoke in their sleep. On the seventh night, Odysseus heard every man on the ship talking in his sleep. There was no storm that night, no pirate sail on the horizon, no god leaning down from the clouds with thunder in his hand. The sea lay flat and dark, like hammered bronze. Starlight rested on the water without breaking. The sail hung loose. The oars were still. The ship felt as if some invisible hand had pressed it gently into the middle of the sea and held it there. Odysseus sat at the stern with one hand near his sword. He had not truly slept in a long time. Whenever he closed his eyes, he heard the walls of Troy falling. He heard men breathing inside the wooden horse. He heard the dead calling his name from the fire. But that night, it was not the dead who spoke first. It was the living. One sailor whispered a word in his sleep, Ananoe. Odysseus lifted his head. Then a second sailor whispered it, a third, a fourth. Soon every sleeping man on deck was murmuring the same strange name, Ananoe, Ananoe. Their eyes were closed. Their faces were empty of pain and fear. They looked less like men at rest than offerings laid out beneath the stars. The word slipped from their throats again and again, soft as a tide turning under the hull. Eurylochus woke with a start and seized his knife. He thought an enemy had climbed aboard, but there was no enemy, only a ship full of men speaking from inside a dream. Odysseus went to the nearest young sailor. His name was Therion. He had been away from home for only 3 years. On calmer nights, he spoke often of his mother, of the crooked fig tree by her door, and of the bronze helmet he meant to hang on her wall when he returned, so she would know he had survived Troy. Now his eyes were shut, his lips pale, and he too was whispering the name. Odysseus woke him. The young man opened his eyes as if he had been dragged up from deep water. He gasped for breath. When he could speak, he said he had dreamed of an island with no sound. Someone there had given him water and told him never to sleep after nightfall. The moment he said it, the whole ship fell silent. Too silent, as if one unseen hand had covered every mouth at once. By dawn, there was still no wind. The men raised the sail. It did not move. They lowered the oars, but the water seemed to harden around the blades. The ship rocked once and settled back into place. Then, through the pale morning mist, a white shoreline appeared. An island. It was on no chart Odysseus had ever seen, and stranger still, there were no birds, no gulls, no crows, no morning cries from the cliffs. White stone houses climbed a low hillside like bones drying in the sun. At the foot of the hill were a harbour, a stair of pale rock, and a few stunted olive trees, but there was no wind and no sound. The ship had only 2 days of fresh water left. The barley cakes in the hold were beginning to rot. Every sailor on board stared at that island with cracked lips and hollow eyes. Odysseus did not like places that seemed to invite him. He liked them even less when they had first come in a dream. But at sea, a man rarely gets to choose the shape of his danger. So he took 6 sailors in the small boat and rowed toward the white harbour. When the boat touched the stone steps, a woman appeared beside the cistern. She wore a plain white linen dress. A bronze pin held back her dark hair. In her hands was a clay cup filled with water. Her eyes were black and watchful, the eyes of someone who had gone too many nights without sleep. She did not ask where they had come from. She did not ask their names. She simply offered the cup to Odysseus and said that the far-travelled captain had arrived at last. Odysseus did not drink. The woman told him that all the wells on the island had risen during the night. That only happened, she said, when the dreams of strangers came near. She would give them water. She would give them figs. She would give them salted fish. But before they left, there was one rule. She said, "After sunset, do not sleep." Odysseus looked down at the cup. The water was too clear, clear as if it had never reflected a human face. Chapter 2. The Place Without Dreams. The island was called Ananoe. The woman said the name was old, older than the elders who still spoke it, older than the stones by the harbour. But Odysseus knew enough broken ancient words to hear its meaning. Ananoe, the place without dreams. By the time they entered the village, the sun was high. It was not a wild island. There were cisterns, stone storehouses, drying figs on flat roofs, and a heavy press for olive oil. At the edge of the village stood weathered slabs carved with marks older than Greek letters. The signs looked like fish bones worn smooth by rain. This place had once been rich and very old. But it was too quiet. In the market, people arranged clay jars, mended nets, and cut bread. Every movement was slow. Every footstep was light. No one looked happy. No one looked sad. No one argued over prices. No children chased one another through the square. No women sang at the well. Even the dogs did not bark. The island did not feel dead. It felt as if it had been lulled to sleep and kept that way for years. The woman in white was named Ione. She led the sailors into a stone hall where bread, olives, dried fish, and watered wine stood on a long table. Hunger almost made the men forget caution, but Odysseus allowed them only a little food. At the back of the hall, he saw a narrow path climbing into the belly of the hill. At its end stood a sealed bronze door. There was no image of Zeus on it, no Apollo, no Athena, only a closed eye without a pupil. Ione said she was not a queen. Ananoe had no king, only keepers of dreams. Long ago, the people of the island had been haunted by nightmares. They dreamed of children drowning, husbands dying far from shore, walls collapsing, famine crawling through the streets, and sickness entering every house. They woke crying before dawn. By day, they feared the coming of night. So their ancestors prayed to the old thing beneath the hill. Not Hypnos, the god of sleep, with temples and hymns and a name men knew how to speak. This power was older than that, colder than that. At first, it took only nightmares. The people slept peacefully. They no longer woke screaming. They no longer wept in the dark hours before morning. But soon the old shadow discovered that sweet dreams were richer than bitter ones. So it stopped taking only nightmares. It took all dreams. Hope, memory, ambition, regret, even the reason a man wished to go home. Outside the stone hall, a single drop of water fell. Drip. It was a small sound, but every islander lifted their head and looked toward the bronze door in the hill. Ione went pale. The sound meant the old shadow had woken. And at that same moment, the sailors saw Therion slumped over the table. He had fallen asleep with half a piece of bread still in his hand. Odysseus woke him at once. The young sailor opened his eyes. He did not cry out. He did not panic. He only looked down at the bread in his fingers with a calm so deep it was frightening. Odysseus asked him where his home was. Therion could not answer. Eurylochus asked him his mother's name. He could not answer that either. After a long silence, the young man who had spoken of home every night at sea asked very softly, "Why would I want to go back?" No one touched the food after that. And from deep inside the hill came another sound. Drip. This time it was closer. Chapter 3. The first man to forget home. At sea, death is not always the thing men fear most. Death has an ending. What is worse is to go on living after you have forgotten why you endured. That was what had happened to Therion. His name remained. His hands remained. His strength remained. He still remembered how to tie a rope, pull an oar, and split salted fish with a knife. But the small lamp that had carried him through hunger, rain, and terror had been taken out of him. He no longer remembered the fig tree by his mother's door. He no longer remembered the roughness of her hands. He no longer remembered telling the others that if he could only reach home, none of the suffering would have been wasted. Eurylochus nearly drew his blade. He did not believe in gentle myths. He did not trust quiet islanders. He believed in the thing in front of him. One of their men had been robbed, and the island had to give back what it had taken. Odysseus stopped him. He had already understood that knives were useless here. The danger was not the islanders. It was the peace inside them. That hollow peace after something essential had been removed. Ione told Odysseus that those who lost their dreams did not die. They became obedient, steady, calm. They no longer fought. They no longer wept. They no longer looked out to sea and longed for anything beyond the shore. This was the gift the old shadow had given Ananoe. To Odysseus, it felt colder than death. Then he noticed a red thread hidden at Ione's sleeve. Among all the people on the island, she was the only one who still feared. The only one whose eyes filled when she spoke of the old shadow. The only one who touched her sleeve as if there was something there she could not bear to lose. So Odysseus knew. The keeper of dreams had kept one dream for herself. Ione did not deny it. She had dreamed of a ship. In the dream, she stood on the shore and watched many faceless people board. As they stepped onto the deck, they called out their own names. Wind came from the sea. The sail filled, and she knew those people were finally leaving. But she herself did not go aboard. She remained on the shore. Odysseus understood. Ione did not want to save herself. She wanted to save everyone on the island who had forgotten who they were. But the old shadow would not release them. And now it was no longer reaching for the dream of one ordinary sailor. It wanted Odysseus. He had too many nightmares. Troy, the wooden horse, burning walls, fallen friends, men lost at sea. But more important than all those nightmares, he still had one good dream. Ithaca. That name lay hidden in him like an ember under ash, because he still believed he could return. He could keep sailing. If the old shadow swallowed that dream, The ship would not sink at once. The men would not die at once. But they would stay. They would eat, draw water, mend nets, and grow quiet like the islanders, until they forgot they had ever been men trying to go home. Eurylochus heard enough. He took several sailors and ran for the harbour. They meant to get back to the ship before the island took anything else, but they returned soon after, their faces white as chalk. The harbour was still there. The anchor rope was still there. The sea was still there. But the ship was gone. Only a dark shape remained on the surface of the water, the outline of a hull like a wound in the harbour. Their ship had sunk into a dream. Odysseus stared at the black mark and understood the law of the island. It did not stop a man's body first. It stole his reason for leaving. Chapter 4: The Old Shadow of Sleep. There was only one road left, into the hill. Ione gave each of them a bitter olive and told them to hold it beneath the tongue. Bitterness, she said, could remind the body that it was awake. Therion did not go with them. He sat at the entrance of the stone hall, watching islanders carry jars as if nothing had changed. When Odysseus passed him, the young man asked if his dream could be left where it was, if they found it. He said he no longer hurt. Odysseus stopped. Then he said, "Pain is not the only thing a man should fear losing." The bronze door opened without a scream of metal. It opened as if it had been waiting. Behind it, stone steps led downward. The walls were carved with closed-eyed figures. Men, women, elders, children, kings, slaves, fishermen, soldiers. All of them held both hands over their chests, as if guarding a secret that was about to be taken. The lower they went, the wetter the air became. From deep inside the hill came the sound of the sea, but they were standing in the heart of the island. At the bottom of the stair was a vast cave. Stone teeth hung from the ceiling. In the center lay a pool of black water. Its surface was still, yet countless little lights drifted beneath it. Some were gold, some pale blue, some glowed like embers about to die. They were dreams. Odysseus stood at the edge of the pool and heard voices under the water. A child laughing, an old man calling for his daughter, a boy saying he would build a ship of his own one day, a woman singing in her sleep, her song pressed back down before it could rise. These dreams did not belong only to the islanders. They belonged to strangers too. Many ships had come to Ananoe. Many had not left. Then a darker shape rose from the center of the pool. It had no fixed body. It was almost human and almost smoke. It had no face, yet every man there felt watched. When it spoke, its voice was gentle. That was what made it terrible. It knew the name of Odysseus. It said dreams gave off light, especially in those who suffered. Men thought they hid their dreams deep, but in the dark they burned brighter than torches. Then the cave vanished. The black pool vanished. Odysseus stood on the shore of Ithaca. Evening was warm. Olive leaves whispered in the wind. The palace doors stood open, and lamplight spilled from within. Penelope waited at the threshold, unchanged from the year he left. Behind her, Telemachus ran out as a little boy. This was the softest dream in Odysseus, and the most dangerous. The old shadow did not offer him a nightmare. It offered him a good dream from which he would never have to wake. He could remain there. He would not have to cross another sea. He would not have to face the dead. He would not have to discover that home had changed while he was gone. Odysseus took one step forward. Then he stopped. The lamp by the door was too steady. Real lamps were not like that. Real homes were not like that. The real Penelope would be older. She would doubt him. She would be angry. She would hold back tears and ask why he had taken so long. His real son would not still be a child. If Odysseus accepted this dream, he would not be getting home. He would be accepting a lie that could never spoil. He opened his eyes. The cave and the black water returned. He refused the false homecoming. For a moment, the old shadow said nothing. Then it demanded the true dream. Eurylochus thought Odysseus had lost his mind. But Odysseus did not step back. He lowered his head and agreed to surrender the dream of going home. Every light under the black water dimmed at once. For the first time, the old shadow showed hunger. Chapter 5. The Lie He Gave the God. Odysseus walked toward the black water. With every step, the dreams gathered at his feet. They moved like fish, like stars, like hands reaching up from the bottom of the pool. Ione knew what it meant to surrender such a dream. A man who lost the dream of home could still eat. He could still walk. He could still speak. But he would no longer watch the dawn for a wind. He would no longer count the stars at night. He would no longer hear a name and have to hold back tears. He would be alive, but the voyage would end inside him first. Eurylochus wanted to stop him. He did not trust this choice. Odysseus needed exactly that. He needed one man there who would not be soothed by a dream. The old shadow drew near and urged him to reveal the true dream. Odysseus closed his eyes. He did see Ithaca, the harbour, the olive trees, the stone steps, the palace, the long table, the bed only he and Penelope knew how to move. But just as the old shadow leaned toward that dream, Odysseus let it continue. He saw the sky darken. He saw the sea rise over the harbour. He saw the olive trees die in salt water. He saw the palace collapse. He saw Penelope standing in a doorway that had no door, her face without eyes. He heard his son's voice speaking from under the sea. Ithaca has drowned. There is no home to return to. This was not his dream. It was a lie. But Odysseus understood fear too well. He knew exactly what a man far from home dreads hearing most. So the lie looked truer than truth. The old shadow swallowed it. The whole hill shook. The black water boiled. Stones fell from the roof of the cave. The gentle voice turned sharp for the first time, because it had discovered it had not swallowed home. It had swallowed a trap made of nightmare. Odysseus opened his eyes. Ione ran to the wall and pulled a bronze chain. A hidden sluice burst open, and clear underground water rushed into the black pool. The black water churned. Dreams rose from the bottom by the hundreds. In that moment, Eurylochus understood why Odysseus had needed his distrust. He threw himself to the edge of the pool and cut through a black strand wrapped around a blue light. Inside that light, a mother's voice called softly for her child to come home before dark. It was Therion's dream. Eurylochus's hand shook. He had spent years accusing Odysseus of making others pay the price for his cleverness. But now he was the one dragging a young sailor's homecoming out of the dark. More dreams surfaced. Dreams of sailors. Dreams of islanders. dreams of strangers who had died long before. Then Ione took the red thread from her sleeve and cast it into the pool. The thread sank, then rose again as a small red light. Within it was a ship. On its deck stood faceless people, each one calling out a name. This was not Ione's dream alone. It was the island's stolen memory. The old shadow reached to push the red light back down. Ione began to cry. Odysseus heard her sob for the first time. It was a small sound, but it was like the first bird waking on the island. She did not want peace anymore. She wanted to remember. The black water surged. It swept Odysseus off his feet and dragged him under. Dreams shattered all around him. At the bottom of the pool, he saw Ithaca again. This time, no god had polished it for him. The sky was dark. There was wind in the harbour. The palace doors were old. The walls were cracked. Penelope was no longer young. Telemachus had grown into a man Odysseus might not know at first. There were empty seats at the table. There was ash beside the bed. Home was not what he remembered, but a lamp burned at the door. Not to make the dream beautiful, to tell the man returning through darkness that the road had not been broken. Odysseus reached for that light. Then he swam upward. Chapter 6. The Man Who Carried the Dream Away. When Odysseus broke the surface, his first breath cut his throat like a blade. There was no lamp in his hand, but everyone saw the small gold light in his palm. It was not fire. It was the dream of home. The old shadow drew back from it. It feared that light because it was not a perfect dream. Perfect dreams were too sweet, too soft, too close to lies. They dissolved the moment they were swallowed, but a true dream had pain in it. Age, misunderstanding, late arrivals, empty places at the table. That was why it would not die. Odysseus pressed the light into Therion's chest. The young sailor doubled over and coughed until tears ran down his face. Then he remembered. His mother, the fig tree, the reason he had to go home. One by one, dreams returned to the living. An islander fell to his knees and cried out the name of a dead child. An old woman clutched a clay jar and said she had dreamed of her husband as he had been when they were young. A man ran out of the cave as if seeing the sky for the first time. They began to suffer, and they began to wake. The old shadow shrank in the center of the black pool. It still tried to warn them. Dreams would bring back fear, it said. They would bring back grief. They would bring back the crying that comes in the dark when no one can help you. Odysseus knew that was true, but he had learned something else. A life without pain is not the same as a life. The hill began to collapse. Ione led them out through another stair. The passage was narrow and the walls were carved with ancient names. Beside every name was a tiny ship. When they burst through the bronze door, night had fallen. For the first time, the island had a sound. Not voices, crickets, soft and uneven under the olive trees. In the harbour, their ship had returned. Its hull was wet, as if it had risen from a very deep dream. The sail hung waiting. Then the wind came. Eurylochus stared at the ship for a long time. He did not apologize to Odysseus. Odysseus did not ask him to. At sea, some forms of trust are not repaired by words. They are repaired when one man reaches into black water and pulls another man's dream back into the world. Ione gave them water and food for the voyage. Odysseus told her she could come with them. She shook her head. The ship in her dream had not come to carry her away. It had come to teach her that the island now needed someone who still knew how to dream. That night, the islanders slept, not peacefully. Some frowned, some wept, some called forgotten names in their sleep. But at last, they slept like human beings. Before dawn, the sailors boarded their ship. Therion stood at the bow with one hand against his chest, as if afraid the small lamp inside him might be stolen again. The wind filled the sail. The ship turned west. Mist rose from Ananoi. The white houses, the cisterns, and the bronze door faded behind it. At last, only one red point remained on the hillside, Ione's thread. She stood on the shore and did not wave. She only watched them go. After a while, Therion asked Odysseus what Ithaca had looked like in his dream. Odysseus looked at the sea and said it was older than he remembered. The young sailor was disappointed. He had thought a good dream should be bright, perfect, and without cracks. Odysseus did not explain much more, because a true good dream does not take pain away. It tells you there is still a road beyond it. Before sunrise, the dreamless island vanished into the mist. The sailors thought it was over. Only Odysseus stopped at the rail. On the wood lay a single drop of black water. It did not move. It did not dry. It looked like a closed eye. Odysseus wiped it away. But after he turned from the rail, something deep inside the wood made the faintest sound. Drip.